Thank you very much, Mitch. My name is Neil Ward-Dutton. I'm the Research Director at MWD Advisors, and I'm going to start off by talking for a few minutes about digital transformation. And then I'm going to hand over to my colleague Angela, who's going to then show how, in the context of that idea of digital transformation, how can we really address the opportunities and challenges with innovation management. So let's get started. Now we hear, and I'm sure you hear as well, lots of people talking about digital technology and how it's disrupting industries. And it's very easy to say, isn't it? It's very easy to write pieces that say this. But it's real, and it's happening right now. And I just wanted to give you one example for the sake of time, and it's in financial services. Now, we're also seeing this kind of thing happening in many places, but here's an example of what's happening in financial services. So on the left-hand side here, you can see the website, the front page of the website of one of very large global banks that's also big here in the UK, where I'm based, HSBC. And around the outside of their homepage there, you can see about 30 or 40 logos of digital native kind of new technology startups that are taking bites out of the portfolio of services that HSBC offers. So you can see on their homepage here, they offer a straightforward bank account. They provide consumer lending, investing services, insurance, financial planning, foreign exchange, exchanging money through currencies, mortgages, and all of these things. And you can see how all of these small startups are taking bites out of the big players like HSBC. Now, and that's the thing that most people focus on, is how big established companies are being attacked. Not kind of head to head, but by having these small players taking bites out of different pieces. But there's more to it than that, actually. The other things that are happening are really about more established competitors using digital technology to create new channels to market and using that to compete. So here in the UK, for example, we're seeing companies that have been around for a while now going much more head-to-head in the consumer banking space with companies like HSBC. So here we have Handelsbanken, of course, from Germany. We have Metro Bank, a bank called One Savings Bank, Shawbrook, Aldermore. These are all people like Shawbrook and Aldermore and so on. These are specialist niche banks that are now offering many more services because they can create new channels and they can work with partners to bring wider portfolios of services to the market. And we're also seeing what you could call out-of-sector competition. So again, using digital technology to create new service wrapping around what they do, we're seeing grocery companies, supermarkets, now offering more financial services to consumers. And of course, many of these guys, whether it's Tesco here or Sainsbury's, many of these guys have offered some services for a long time, let's say credit cards and loans, but now they're also starting to offer mortgages and insurance and savings accounts. So the key I wanted to share with you here is that digital disruption is real, and it's not just about new startups using technology to take bites out of the established players. It's actually also about new competition across industry boundaries, and niche players becoming, creating much more broad portfolios of services. So a lot of competitive change happening, and this is just one example in financial services. But you know what? What we're seeing in our research, our benchmarking, our workshops and so on, is that it's not just actually about competition. It's more than that. So I've got 4 key impact areas here that we're finding. And the top right piece you can see is what I've just been talking about, new kinds of competitor. And as you can see here, it's not just about banking, it's also about media, entertainment, hospitality, telecoms, travel and transport, retail, of course. That's a big part of the picture, yes, but there's much more as well. We're seeing that digital technology is also changing customers' expectations, particularly, and that's the top left here, by the way, particularly we're finding that people have much higher expectations around being able to do business with people, with companies across different channels. So on the mobile, on a regular computer, in store, on the telephone, through chat channels and so on, and having instant information that is consistent across those channels. Having a responsive dialogue, so you don't have to wait a long time to get information. And transparency, this is super important. So we're finding that organizations and people have much higher expectations about the level of information they're getting. So really understanding exactly what's going on. If I make an order to buy something, I don't just want to know, okay, I've made the order. I want to know where is the company with the order? Have they taken the order? Have they picked the goods? Have they prepared to ship the goods? Have they shipped the goods? If they've shipped the goods, where are they? When am I going to get them? We're getting completely new kinds of expectation around transparency from customers. There's also the transparency piece also comes in on the bottom right here, which is really around not what customers are expecting, but what other stakeholders, like regulators, are expecting. So we're seeing much higher expectations because of digital technology around the ability to really be very clear about what the supply chain looks like, where goods, products, services, materials are coming from, how effective we are from end to end. It's really, really making big impacts there in terms of the way operations are put together and the information we can get from the way a company operates and the way we can report that to stakeholders. And lastly, there's a changing risk landscape. That's the bottom left. People often think when they think about digital technology, they'll think about the obvious things like data security risks, you know, somebody coming and hacking our website and stealing all of our customers' details, or business continuity. So, you know, we recently had that big outage on the Amazon cloud where their storage service went down and many digital companies had trouble. So we think of those things, of course, but actually there's more risks that also come into play around the changing nature of employment, for example, a much more fast-changing workforce. How do we manage the human capital risk associated with that? How do we make sure that we're really keeping knowledge in the company when we have a workforce that's changing more quickly? How do we handle risks around product liability as we start to integrate digital features and services with physical products? It creates whole new ways we have to think about product quality, around sustainability of the product in the field, how we do upgrades and all that kind of thing. So this whole digital shift we're seeing in different industries, it's easy to think about the competitive pieces, but it has deeper impacts on our organizations, right through to the very core of the way our organizations work and the way we make decisions about how the organization needs to be structured and how it needs to be compliant, how it needs to manage risk, how it needs to run its operations. It goes right to the core. Okay, so there's really big things going on here. Now, some research we've been doing over the last year or so has sort of created some interesting views for us in terms of what people think of when they think of digital. And it's important to understand this. So we've been talking in different environments to marketing and sales people about what they mean by digital. We've been talking to operations people. We've been talking to HR and communications people. And we've been talking to product and strategy people. And they all have their own view on what digital transformation means. So marketing people will say, oh yeah, digital, that's about creating new kinds of customer experience, you know, social platforms, mobile apps, personalized websites, and so on. That's on this chart here. That's the top right-hand part, this orange box. We talk to HR and communications leaders, and they say, yeah, digital. That's about using mobile, social, kind of digital workplace technologies to engage with employees better, to manage our knowledge better. That's the green box on the top left. We talk to operations people, and they say, yeah, digital transformation, that's about instrumenting our operations, our supply chain, using mobile technology, predictive analytics to get better at fixing problems and understanding how we can optimize. And we talk to product and strategy people, and they say, yeah, digital transformation, that's really about creating new kinds of business models, online services and products, bringing together data in new ways so that we can get new kinds of value. And you know what? They're all right. They're all correct, actually, but they're all only seeing one part of the picture. Like it says on this chart, the real power of digital technology is how it enables us to more efficiently coordinate resources. And each group here is seeing the view from one corner. And they're looking at one particular kind of resource. And on the axes of my diagram here, I've laid them out. So the resources that are on the top part of this diagram are really about people and the knowledge they have. And the resources at the bottom are about processes and things, goods, vehicles, infrastructure, and so on. On the left-hand side, resources are resources that are inside our organization. They're ones that we really control. And on the right-hand side, they're really resources that we don't control them directly. They're out there in the market. So everyone is kind of looking at how digital technology may enable them to coordinate resources more efficiently, but they're looking at different kinds of resources, and so they're seeing maybe only one part of the picture. And it's really important, I think, if you're serious about understanding what digital technology might mean for you, that you think a little bit about the different boxes on this chart and how they fit together. Because what we're finding is that the companies that are really doing this well and moving fast and having success are the ones that realize that each box on this picture, it doesn't live in its own world. It actually connects to all the others. And the better you can make those connections, the more successful you'll be. And that's really when we look at how we can use technology to drive change in our organizations strategically, this is the kind of thing that needs to be a priority. How can we make bridges between these different perspectives, these different views of digital? Because for sure, if we really want to drive change in the way our organization works, we can't just focus on one of the different boxes. For example, if we say, okay, we're going on a digital transformation journey, and we're really only focused on the orange box, we're really only focused on how we can drive new customer engagement through mobile apps, through a more personalized website, and so on. That's cool, that's fine. But how far will you get if you do all those cool things at the front end, and then the customer-facing web properties and so on, but when it comes to someone signing up for your product or service, you still have very poor processes for really managing a smooth flow of information and setting them up, onboarding them properly, making sure that you're really protecting against fraud, that you're, that you're fulfilling regulations about the kinds of customers you're bringing into the business. If you haven't also thought about the operational piece, the blue piece, and if you haven't thought properly about the green piece, which is how are you going to make sure that your people have the right information so they can drive the right decisions at the right time, then actually it doesn't matter how great your new website is or your new mobile app. They can be the coolest things ever, and you'll still fail. So that's just one example of why it's so important to look at this. All right, let's just shift gears a little bit. The other thing I want you to take away from my part of this talk is that digital is not only about where you're going. All right. So most organizations that we speak to, when we talk about digital, they will say, oh, yeah, okay, so we're talking about cloud. So, using the internet as a platform for hosting applications and platforms. They might say, yeah, it's about social. So it's about using internet technology to create new ways for us to have conversations. Or they might say, yeah, it's about Internet of Things, IoT. So Internet of Infrastructure, or it's about mobile, creating new ways of connecting devices together to get new insights and allow us to do things on the move. Yeah, that's part of it, but actually the really underlying thing that's more important is that digital technology changes the way that change happens if you do it right. Okay, so it's not just about where you're going, it's about how you get there. And what we find is when we talk to organizations who are really pushing hard on this and really going in a very sustainable direction, they really see that it's about platforms fundamentally. It's about creating a business platform that does two things together. It allows you to get insight from your products, from your services, from your business processes. Yeah, so using digital technologies to create instrumentation around those things, to get data out of them, to get insight, so we can see how are our products really being used, how are our services really performing, are people satisfied with those, and what's going wrong? What about our processes internally? Are we really supporting our products and services in the right way? Are there problems? Are we having to do things many times? Are we getting things wrong? Are we taking too long? So getting those insights out of that, and then having a platform that allows us to change services and processes and models on top of that very quickly. So it's not about where we're going, it's about how we get there. It's a fundamentally different way of looking at change that is powered by insight and data, and then having the ability to move fast on top of that. So it's fundamentally a new model of change that is much more open, it's much faster, it's more data-driven, and as I said, very different from how a lot of organizations have thought about this in the past. And there's something really important that's really powering a lot of this new thinking, and it's really about the underlying economics of technology. I won't spend a long time on this, but I just wanted to quickly explain something. You kind of may, if you're in the technology space, you may already be familiar with this, or you may not. But when we look at the three fundamental technology elements that enable us to get things done in technology, we have compute, core computing capacity, so the ability to do calculations in chips. We have storage, so hard disks, flash storage, the ability to store data, and connectivity, networks, the ability to move data around. When you look at how those things have changed over time in terms of what we pay and how much capacity we get, we are looking at somewhere between 8 and 10 orders of magnitude improvement. So in 1961, if you wanted a gigaflop, a technical term, a gigaflop, so I think it's like something like a million operations a second. You wanted a computer that could do that for you. Well, it wasn't possible, but doing the maths, it would have cost you about $1 trillion. Now it costs you 8 cents, okay, for that same capacity. If you're looking at storage, a terabyte of storage in 1964 would have cost you, if you could get it, $3.5 billion. Now it costs $27 billion. $27. All right. So you can see a similar thing with connectivity. Absolutely mind-blowing changes in what we can get for our money. Yeah, it's absolute. This really is when people say paradigm shift. This is what they're talking about, and this has a major change. And this is really what's driving a new way of thinking about how we can use technology to change in new ways. Because in the 1960s, 70s, 80s, and even 90s, actually we had a world of scarcity where computing was expensive, storage and everything, very expensive. And so making changes was risky, and it took a long time. You really didn't want to do it, and you wanted to test everything very, very hard before you deployed anything. So change was always expensive, risky, and took a long time. And so people tried to avoid it. What we're finding now, though, is very different mindsets starting to emerge around how we change. And here's some quotes from some workshops we've been doing with some technology leaders over the last few months. And they really are embracing this more experimental approach to change. It enables them to try things out much faster and understand, okay, if this new product feature, this new service, this new process isn't working, we'll just change it. and we can change it quickly because we understand what's going on and we understand how to improve. So there's a much more innovative mindset, a much more experimental mindset, and we also have the underlying capabilities to do it. And when we ask people, okay, who are the organizations that you're modeling yourselves on? Who do you want to be like? You know, they're talking about Netflix, they're talking about Google, they're talking about Salesforce and Airbnb and so on. So these are organizations that have a reputation for being able to change quickly and to be able to change with confidence, and make have an experimental approach to how they're driving improvement and new ideas around products, services, and business processes. So I'm going to finish there, but I just want to leave you with this overview, which is that digital transformation fundamentally, yes, it's about using new kinds of platform to do things in the cloud and so on, but the more fundamental piece is it's changing the way that your organization can change, giving you new opportunities to change faster, to try things out more. And of course, this creates its own challenges, because when we have all the choice in the world, we need tools and approaches that help us manage that better. And that's the point I'm going to hand over to Angela.
Thanks, Neil. Okay, so yes, I'm going to change focus a little bit, talk a little bit about the role that innovation management plays in helping you to take advantage of the opportunities that digital transformation brings. And the first thing we need to do really is to change, to revisit our approach to driving innovation within organizations. So where organizations, and you may be the same, where they already have formalized programs for innovation, these have historically been very much sort of top-down exercises. So perhaps they are owned by a small number of people in an innovation team, and they are charged with identifying the best opportunities that are going to drive the business forward. But in this new fast-paced and digital world that we're in now, the kind of isolated ivory tower style approach to innovation programs doesn't really cut it anymore. Firstly, because as you can see here, it's inherently biased in its perspective. So the individuals involved, for all their good intentions, they tend to come at innovation from just one perspective, based on either their personal background and experience, or from where they're being directed by the board, for example. They often lack sort of the breadth of context and real visibility of what's actually happening, both across the business more broadly and also outside the organization in the wider global markets and global space. And plus, of course, with a small group in charge of identifying these opportunities and deciding which of them are going to receive investment and be taken forward, there's a fundamental lack of scale. The chances that the projects that they choose are going to be the right ones to significantly and successfully transform your business are incredibly small. And often it's just not possible for the small team to move fast enough to take advantage of what might be a very good idea. So inevitably opportunities are going to be missed. So whether that's through the lack of good ideas, or the wrong ideas being taken to project stage, or not being able to deliver on those ideas quickly enough for them to make a real difference to your business, regardless, we need a better approach. Okay, next slide, please. So what we need is a more scalable and flexible model, which really takes better advantage of, as Neil was saying earlier, of the knowledge and the skills and the experiences of the organization as a whole. So shifting innovation from being the priority and responsibility of just a few to something which involves the whole business, and that includes both its employees and also its external stakeholders as well. And this is where innovation management technologies and practices come into the equation. These are taking a community-oriented approach to the innovation process, so enabling organizations to engage their staff in different roles and departments across the business, as well as those external parties from different stages in the business life cycle, so your customers, your partners, and your suppliers, for example, and then providing them with an open, collaborative environment which encourages an agile and always evolving approach to innovation and change, and then applying that to multiple different contexts and processes. Okay, next slide. Great. So the most easily accessible audience that you can reach with this type of community-oriented approach is, of course, your employees. And there are some really compelling advantages to be had from engaging them in your innovation program. You know, both advantages to the program itself, but also in the context of the overall culture of your organization. So the first benefit then is that you immediately overcome that bias issue that I was talking about before by encouraging people with many different perspectives to take part in the process. And because everyone can contribute ideas and provide input to those ideas, you end up with a much more balanced, much more self-writing almost program, which takes better account of the reality of your organization as it is right now. You know, you can benefit not just from people's current role and expertise, but also, you know, their previous experiences, both within your company and outside. You know, different contexts, different interests that they might have, and all of these things add colour and depth to your decision-making process. And it's also important to remember that your employees are also consumers, so they can bring that perspective to the discussion as well. And the second benefit, which in fact it builds on the first, and this relates to the increased scale that comes from engaging your employees in the innovation process. So if everyone can contribute ideas, can provide feedback, and flesh out the seeds of ideas into something more valuable, then the richness of your idea pool can increase dramatically. You know, and if more ideas are added in at the top of the funnel, the number that make it through and out the other side to sort of project stage and becoming a reality and delivering value, you know, that number can increase too. And it's also worth noting that the increased scale does mean that the pressure on each individual idea is alleviated. So not every idea has to be the big idea. You know, you've got scope to deliver smaller ideas as well, you know, alongside, creating, you know, a more balanced, steadily flowing portfolio of innovation and of change. And then the third benefit here is one which is tied less tightly to your innovation program per se, but it's an extremely important sort of side benefit to this approach. So by inviting your employees to take part, you can really help to improve levels of employee engagement because people feel they have more of a say of what's happening inside your business, and also because they actually develop a better understanding of why decisions are made and how the business strategy is determined. And because each person's participation in the innovation management program is actually visible, you know, when they contribute idea, it's shown to be provided by them. They can be recognised for their contributions, and you know, by connecting the whole organisation through this one collaborative environment, it's easier for staff to identify potential avenues or career opportunities that they might want to explore across different parts of the business. And this kind of has sort of a feedback benefit for the organisation too, of course, through the improved performance and also the better retention of staff that comes from improved employee engagement. Okay, next slide. So, of course, we talked about employees, but it's not just your employees who you can include as part of your innovation program. In fact, organisations are increasingly sort of reaching out to external stakeholders as well to bring an outside viewpoint to the table. And the most obvious group, of course, is that on the top left is your customers. You know, these are the people who they have experience of working with you and your products and services already, and they can share their ideas for how you can improve on those products or deliver a better service, or or simply satisfy a personal wish list they might have. But the other thing to remember is that, yes, they know your offerings well, but they might also have awareness of working with your competitors, or with companies who maybe aren't in your direct space, but are doing new things that might work well for your business too. And the same is true for your suppliers and partners, of course. And they have the added exposure of more of your internal processes, for example, through working through as part of your supply chain, or through joint go-to-market activities, so they can help there too. But there are other groups too. Your investors, clearly they have a vested interest in helping the business to do well, but they might also have market knowledge that they can contribute to your innovation activities, as well, of course, as their own business insights which they can add. And there may be other external experts too who can add value with experiences of what works or doesn't based on their own context. So you can think more widely about who those parties might be. Next slide, please. Now. And so, oh no, back one. Thank you. So this one is actually just an extension of the previous one, just to point out that actually it's better if you can actually go one step further. So not seeing these partner groups as fundamentally separate, people that or groups or even individual organisations that you need to work with on a one-to-one basis, but instead sort of connecting all of those together as a collective community, so driving sort of more open discussions and opportunities. And this is kind of a second layer of transparency which has benefits for your business, not only in terms of saving you the burden of combining the different perspectives of these groups, but it also allows you to break down the barriers that quite often come up between different parties that you engage with, and these kind of barriers often cause friction and confusion and distrust as well. Because I think what's important here is that it's not simply about creating a larger pool from which to gather or develop your ideas. It's also really for your external stakeholders an opportunity to create stronger relationships with each of these groups, showing them how important your business considers them to be, asking for their input on products and services and processes that fundamentally impact upon them. And if it's done well and if it's done honestly, it's a fantastic way to build brand loyalty and to make sure that you really remain constantly competitive and relevant in each of their eyes. Okay, next slide. Okay, so in practice, of course, the concept of open innovation, maybe it's not a particularly new one as a concept at least, but where organisations often fall down when they try to do this is they don't recognise or perhaps maybe accept the broader role that these different groups of stakeholders I've just talked about can play in your innovation process. Because it's not just about casting the net wider for idea generation. There's an opportunity to engage the groups in the subsequent stages of your innovation process as well. So, for example, in developing the ideas through comments and feedback and discussions, which allow for different perspectives and viewpoints to combine and build upon each other. And also at the idea evaluation stage as well, where your community can help to identify the best candidates, the best ideas for further consideration through things like voting or comparison tools, as well as analytics-driven methods, which basically assess the level of interest and collaborative activity that takes place around each idea. And even at the prototyping stage, there's potential to embrace the enthusiasm of the community. You know, for example, enabling employees to participate in developing ideas that they may be contributed to, you know, beyond that initial stage. And this can be a really really interesting way to find the entrepreneurs that are lurking in your organization, the people maybe who can bring together teams to work on ideas, or maybe who turn out to be really good at operating in areas outside of their primary role. Okay, next slide. So we talk about change a lot, but I think the key here is about providing a way to accelerate the pace of change within your organization. And innovation management really is a vehicle for not just, you know, initiating that change, but also developing it into a scalable process that provides, you know, a clearly defined structure, one that is repeatable, and that really provides the maximum visibility to everybody who's involved. So not just those people who are responsible for the outputs of the innovation, but everyone who has taken the time to feed into the process at whichever stage. And this provides them with confidence about how things are progressing, but also it really does increase the pace at which change can happen, because you know, the burden is basically shared across multiple people who are operating in a much more open and agile way. It also ensures that you know, you're not just capturing ideas, but you're also exploring those ideas. You're accepting or rejecting them. You're developing them into concepts, and then potentially, you know, delivering them as projects. And, you know, also it allows all of this to be tracked, to be monitored, to be reviewed, both at an operational sort of day-to-day level, but also at a macro level to allow you to identify and understand, you know, broad trends across what's happening. And let's face it, at a time where we're facing this pressure to embrace change and to transform the way that we're operating, you know, this level of momentum, this speed, is not just desirable anymore; it's actually necessary. Okay, next slide, please. Next slide, please.
Apologies, Angela. We're just having a short bit of a technical hiccup. Here we go.
Great, thank you. Okay, so really the goal here is to create, what you're trying to do with innovation management is to create a culture of innovation across and around your organization. So, you know, creating a culture where innovation and change are the norm, and actually therefore no longer carry, you know, lots of the stigma and the fear that sometimes causes people to resist and object to changes. So fundamental to this is that everyone has to be welcome and encouraged to get involved, you know, with the mindset that any participation at all is positive. So whether it's contributing ideas or providing comments to develop or explore someone else's ideas, or just you know, voting or asking a question, the more people who step forward, the better. You know, and initially you'll have pockets of participation, and you need to sort of think about building these on top of these pockets in the same way as you might with any sort of collaborative platform. It's about encouragement and support, you know, rather than trying to manage or control people's participation. And crucially, I've talked about this a little already, but people do need to see that they are recognised for their contributions. When an idea is successful, those people who have been involved with it, either submitting it or discussing it and helping it to go forward, they need to be sort of rewarded or celebrated in some way so that they can see the value in taking part. And at the same time, it's also important to remember that not every idea is necessarily perfect for your business. So collaboratively exploring an idea and then ultimately deciding that it's not right is as important as taking a really good idea forward. You know, for all of us, your resources are finite. There's only so much you can do, so it's best not to waste effort on the wrong investment. And any input that helps you to make those decisions, that's really valuable. And then another feature of an innovation culture is this acknowledgement that you don't need to be an expert in the area in question in order to be able to add value in terms of discussing the idea or helping it to progress. And in fact, the more people do step outside their comfort zones, the better. And this helps to overcome assumptions and bias. It helps to sort of clarify decisions that are made. It helps to remove or kind of overcome jargon that might creep in. And it can be really important in creating sort of a balanced perspective on an idea. And then finally, a powerful shift that this kind of innovation culture brings is this kind of recognition that every obstacle is a potential idea opportunity. So if you encounter a problem while trying to get something done, you've got the opportunity to find a better way. So by highlighting the issue and getting the discussion going around it, that could be a way to make things better. So you kind of develop this virtuous circle of acknowledging change opportunities and embracing them, and again, all sort of helping people to change their mindsets and increase their sense of responsibility and ownership for making things better, for driving change, and for obviously in turn you're going to be increasing engagement levels as a result. Okay, next slide. So this is kind of going back to Neil's slide from earlier, because I think it's important to point out that you can think creatively about how you take advantage of this type of program to drive change. It's not just about new product or service development, although of course that's an area that's always of interest because it has clearly identifiable links to revenues. But you can, remembering that digital transformation has much greater potential than this, and your innovation goals can be just as wide-reaching as those. So you can focus your campaigns or your challenges to source ideas in any of those 4 quadrants that we have up there, addressing your both internal and external processes, whether that's things like employee onboarding, for example, or even customer onboarding, or improving in-store digital experiences for customers, for example. So whether it's it's about identifying new markets, resolving specific operational challenges that you might have, or embracing new technologies, you have the scope and the flexibility to direct your innovation community to address whatever makes sense given your company's goals and their ambitions. Okay, next slide. So this is the final slide that I wanted to share. This is a few best practice takeaways to help you maybe make the most of your innovation management investment in the context of this broader digital transformation perspective. So the first thing is to make sure that you feed your innovation cycle. So remembering that the importance of engaging and feeding back to participants throughout the process. You're not just focusing on capturing their ideas, but showing the success and the progress of the really good ideas, the impact that it has, and taking your whole community with you throughout that process. Secondly, you need to carefully manage your innovation portfolio, build a balanced portfolio of ideas and projects that combine the easy to implement quick wins that maybe help you to maintain your momentum with larger investments or projects that provide opportunities to transform your business in more significant ways. And thirdly, remember that although creating business differential is vital, but it's also important to acknowledge the value of industry-wide transformational shifts. So bringing your supply chain, your partners and customers with you, and even recognizing that when the whole industry embraces this digital transformation, it has positive repercussions for everybody. And then lastly, remember to monitor and measure your success, not just to demonstrate the value that you deliver, but also to help you to refine and improve your innovation processes, to help you to balance that portfolio maybe more effectively, and maximize the value of the effort that your community is putting in. Okay, well, thank you very much. We now have some time for Q&A, so I think, Neil, do you want to take the lead on that?
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, Angela. Sorry for that brief hiccup with the slides. That's technology for you, eh? So we've got some really good questions, actually. There's a couple that stand out here for you, definitely. So first question that came in here is, does the role of an innovation manager nowadays have to change fundamentally? Do you have anything that you'd like to kind of talk about with that one?
Well, I think it does to a large extent, because actually there are different levels to being an innovation manager now. I mean, there's kind of the sort of strategic level of organising the portfolio of innovation. What are the mixture of big ideas and small ideas that you've got operating, and how are they balancing together? But I think also in this kind of environment, you've also got to sort of take into account that they are really a community manager as well. So there's an element of how do you make sure that role is taking into account how you embrace other people's participation in that program. So I think there's definitely a shift.
All right, fantastic. Thanks, Angela. So here's another. I'm afraid you're going to be the busy one here. I'll be the kind of the moderator. How do you get people to use an innovation management tool?
Okay, well, I guess the first thing to say, that depends on who you're trying to reach with the tool, because I think you'll have a slightly different perspective. I mean, particularly, for example, if you're trying to implement it for your employees, then you can have a much more structured approach to training in the same way as you might do, and I talk about this a lot on the collaboration side, but in terms of engaging business leaders and helping to sort of help people to understand what is the value of what you're trying to do, not just what you want them to do, but what's the purpose of it from their perspective, for their team's perspective. And so there's lots you can do around that. For the wider, if you're taking sort of the external audiences into account, there are other things which also apply to employees too that you can do. One is that sort of using, seeding the platform with ideas, give people a sense of what it is you're wanting them to do, making sure that you do the whole community management piece, so responding, anyone who takes part, encourage them, welcome them, start the conversation with them, making connections between people if you know that there are people with particular interests or skills who might be interested in taking part in an idea. It's all about maintaining the momentum and kind of interacting with them as much as you can.
Thanks, Angela. That's great. Okay, here's another one. It sounds as if well, I'm not sure, actually. I was going to say it's related to the first question, but actually I think it's slightly different, which is how can you motivate employees if their ideas will not be realized? I think what it means is if people submit ideas or work on ideas that aren't realized, how do you continue to motivate them?
Well, it's a good question, but I think the key is to try to maybe provide a bit more structure in terms of what it is you're asking them to contribute to. So the concept of things like campaigns and challenges, and where you're being very specific, saying, okay, this is the problem we're trying to solve. How would you do it? Because that will give you a much greater sort of focus for those ideas to be more likely to make it through. But I think so long as that there is recognition that the ideas that are of interest, that encourage discussion, that helps people to understand what it is about contributing an idea that makes it a positive one, then I think it's a gradual process that you have to work through. You kind of can't tell people overnight, but yeah, I think it's just about trying to encourage positive behaviour. So when people are participating, it's just as good as, you know, contributing an idea. And in fact, sometimes that's more valuable. So getting people to say, well, we have these ideas, you know, what do you think of those? Maybe directing them towards those ideas to provide input. It helps to kind of build that discussion so it becomes less of a competition for whose idea is the best.
Brilliant. Okay. Now this question, it might be out of scope, but it'd be great to get your take on whether there's an innovation management angle to it. So the question says, it would be ideal if everyone could do everything, but in the real world, different people have different abilities and potentials. How do we redesign our existing organization to optimize our resources and figure out what we need to add or subtract? Now it sounds to me that might be actually a slightly broader question about how you change the staffing in an organization to enable you to deliver on your strategy. But is there an innovation management angle to that kind of change process?
Well, I think that would be a great challenge to use within the platform, because I think, yes, I mean, I agree. I think it's probably bigger than we can handle in the context of today's session, certainly in the next few minutes. But I think, yeah, I mean, the more that you can recognize that change is not going to happen quickly, and yeah, I think I can answer it succinctly, really, at this point.
No, I do think it's a slightly.
We'll come back to that.
I think it's a slightly wider question, but I wanted to make sure we covered it off anyway. So thanks very much for having a go. So as a follow-up question from one of the earlier ones, which I think is really interesting. Do you see a mismatch of top-level management's perception about digitization and employees' daily tasks? What's the role of middle management? There's a couple of questions there, but you've got anything to add on that?
I think it's an interesting perspective, because I think there probably is a disconnect, but I think the key is to really make sure that that the direction is to a large extent is open enough to allow for a different perspective, because I think that the challenge is for the people who are sort of on the ground, as it were, you know, their immediate instinct might be to think about sort of the smaller things that can be changed, where maybe your leadership team are thinking about big, you know, disruption things. But I think you can have a balance of the two, and I think so long as you have scope to support that, you can. Yeah, I'm not sure about the role of middle management in there. I think to a large extent there's the issue around middle management, I think, is probably going to come back more to their belief of the purpose of employees getting involved, because obviously this is, you know, you do end up with some people being concerned about, you know, people taking time to do this when they should be doing other things. I think that's potentially more of an issue around the middle management issue. But I don't know. I mean, what do you think, Neil? Is sort of your perspective too?
I think you made a couple of really good points. I think often middle management people, I don't want to generalize too much, but often middle management are kind of stuck in the middle, and you find that change kind of happens from both directions, and they end up you know, either being willfully kind of obstructive. That does sometimes happen, but often I don't think it's that kind of Machiavellian. It's more just that a lot of the time people don't actually think enough about middle management and about what those people need to do to help facilitate effective change. It tends to be either thought of from the top down, or it's very much a kind of bottom up thing, and those people are kind of not considered properly. So. Yeah, it ends up being a little bit too loose and undefined. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, that's worked through It's actually a great list of questions, and I really do appreciate everybody's chiming in there. So I think we're done. Mitch, do you want to close us out here?